Well, street photographer. That's a very interesting title because I don't really put too many titles on myself. But I look at myself really as an individual who's on assignment. You know, the camera is just really my compass, and it just leads me to different directions so I could achieve my objective, which is to really, inspire young people. You know, so my style, or I would say more so my approach, is to carry my camera everywhere I go. Always have a portfolio of me and images that reflect the people in which I photograph. Present myself in a certain manner, which is very important because there's a process before I would even leave my house to go out there and shoot. You know, I had to get into deep meditation, and I had to get under the deep study, both mentally, physically, and spiritually before I went out and hit the concrete. So there was a spiritual process that I would involve myself in before I even went out in the street, because I know I was dealing with spiritual warfare. You know, it was out there, and I had to be prepared for all the elements in which I was going to encounter. But my main objective, was to use my camera as my compass to guide me to different locations. And a part of that process was to go to places where a lot of people were populated at. So one of the places I would go to, two major high schools in my area. One was Samuel J. Tilden High School, which was in East Flatbush. And then it was Erasmus High School that was in the Flatbush section of Brooklyn. During the day, I would go to Tilden and speak to young people. I would photograph them and develop friendships. A lot of them were, in fact, my friends' younger brothers and sisters, so I had already knew a lot of them. So the camera allowed me to communicate and engage them and try to talk to them about what was going on. I often spoke about the importance of education, the importance of loving one another, being mindful of the things that we put in our system. And I would always leave the people I would build with a simple statement. And everything you do today is going to reflect upon your future. Because I didn't want the young to fall victim the way I fell victim when I was young. My parents had divorced, and I was living a very destructive way of life, and there wasn't a lot of guidance out there to put me on a path. So when I saw these young people at the age in which I was just a few years earlier, I wanted to just help give them guidance because I didn't want them to fall in the cracks. So my process was always about engaging, showing work to help you understand who I am. Because taking photographs of people you don't know is not always easy, because it's a combination between those that I knew and those that I didn't know. So you had to approach people in a certain current, and having work always made a difference. And embracing, having that desire that was embedded in me early on. Wanting for your brothers, you want for yourself. It manifested in the way I approached them. So they felt the love that was in me and was sincere. There was no manipulation. Because mind you now, at that time, there wasn't a lot of people taking photographs. So you had a camera, you had a photographer, or you were a tourist. And in my area, there was really neither. So I was kind of like unique. But a lot of people opened up to me because my heart was sincere. And I was just travel, and I would approach, my main process was really looking for the alpha. I'll look at a group of individuals and I'll try to determine who is the leader of that group. So if I'm going to engage that group and try to convince them that I'm sincere and I want to get the photograph, I would go to that person and I would introduce myself and I would build with him. And once I was able to win him over, because it's very, the studying process is important too. I went through a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is very important in my process of understanding body language and how to communicate. So that's one of the things I learned in that book. And I would find that person, that leader, and I would embrace him and recognize him, his strength. And in being able to convince him, then he would let his soldiers know, this brother's good, let's get this picture. And that was my process often. Then I would leave Tilden, go to Erasmus. After Erasmus got out, I go downtown Brooklyn, and that was another nucleus. I would go in places where a lot of people would be at. And the Albee Square Mall at that time was that nucleus where a lot of cats would hang out at, and that was where I needed to be because my mission wasn't really to get photographs. My main mission was to try to save young brothers because I felt something was going down. There was a bad vibration in the air at that time in 1980, and I didn't really know what it was. Something was going on, and what I would find out a few years later, like in 83, 84, is that crack was on the horizon, crack cocaine, and AIDS was there. So people were dying, and I felt at 20 years old that I have to lend my voice and make a difference out there because I recognized I had a duty and responsibility to save young people, and that's what it was all about. The photograph became evidence of the conversation. So when I look at my work, it's really like a visual diary of my journey. It's deeper than the Pumas, the Adidas, the posing and all that. It was about people I interacted with, I had conversations with, because what you find in my work, in my process is that I'm engaging people. I'm not just taking pictures without asking people's permission. I didn't do that. I approached you. I introduced myself to you. Very rarely did I ever do that. It wasn't about that. It was like letting you know that I'm sincere. Just to take a picture on the sneak tip, that's not what I did. So when I look at my work, I'm actually looking at a reflection of me. And when I look deep into the eyes of my subjects, they looking back at me. And that means a lot to me to be able to break that ice and communicate with them, let them know I was sincere. And I always carried a business card with me too. So I would tell a lot of the brothers, here's my card. And back in those days, you can go to a 1 hour photo. And I would jet down to Chinatown and throw the film in the shop, wait for about maybe 30 minutes to an hour, get the film, go back to downtown Brooklyn, give brothers the photographs. And that meant a lot to me. And then they knew I was sincere. So it was always an exchange. I never wanted any money from anybody. All I wanted to do was build a bridge. And I was able to effectively do that for many years because a lot of these young brothers in that area in particular, they didn't know me. So I had to win them over. And the Albee Square Mall in downtown Brooklyn itself was very interesting because it was a nucleus and many roads led there. So you had people from all the major projects, Coney Island, Bed-Stuy, Brownsville, Fort Greene, Red Hook, would merge downtown Brooklyn any given day. So for me as an individual that wanted to be a fisher of men and a savior, that was the prime place for me to be.